Back, you're watching A Mirror at One. Now, the Supreme Court has pulled up the centre government over rising disparity in medical expenses between government and private facilities. The top court said that citizens have a fundamental right to healthcare, and the centre cannot shun away from its responsibilities. In fact, the Supreme Court has asked the Union Health Secretary to call a meeting of his state counterparts to ensure notification of a standard rate within a month. The Supreme Court warned that if the union government fails to find a solution, then the top court will consider petitioner's plea for implementing the CGHS-prescribed standardized rates. Now, an NGO had moved the Supreme Court seeking directions for centre to determine the fee rates applicable to patients according to the clinical establishment central government rules, that is, in 2012. Now, under the rules, all hospitals must display rates charged for each service they provide, and they will have to charge rates determined by centre from time to time in consultation with state governments. But to better understand what they make of this, I'm being joined in by my guest this afternoon, Professor Sriram Khanna, Managing Editor, Consumer Voice Magazine, K.K. Sharma, Senior Advocate, and Dr. Sanjeev Bagai, Chairperson, Nephron. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for taking time and joining us here this afternoon on Mirror Now. Mr. Sharma, let me begin with you. With the fact that the Supreme Court has made some stinging remarks as well, also telling the centre essentially to not be shrugging away from responsibility, how do you really view this?
As a matter of fact, this petition was filed in 2020 June, and when COVID had already begun. And at the time, in some other connection, Supreme Court has already directed the government to look into the rates and all. So this has been pending before the Supreme Court, and on 2-3 occasions, the Supreme Court was constant to impose penalty because reply was not coming. After 4 years now, because no action was taken, day before, they had to tell that you do your job within about a period of 6 weeks and come up with the definite rates, which is your responsibility. And in case it is taking time, then we'll be constant to apply CGHS rates, which are available for across the country for similar circumstances. So this is a very good move for a common consumer, common man.
All right. Mr. Sharma, as you call that a good move, let me get in a word from Dr. Bagai. Dr. Bagai, you heard what Mr. Sharma had to say, but do you also think there are loopholes in implementing this? What do you make of it essentially?
Hi, good afternoon. I've been a very strong advocate of fair pricing, which is ethical. At the present moment, a lot of private healthcare, especially in corporate hospitals, is dysfunctional and it's completely absurd. Just bear with me for 60 seconds so that I can actually explain to a common viewer what really happens. From costing, it has gone to profit, it has gone to profiteering. There has to be a uniform pricing policy within a given bandwidth and a framework so that you can have a transparent and neutral, fair pricing for a patient. There are many factors which come in. It's the cost of land. In Delhi, at least NCR, all the land which is given to hospitals is institutional land. Either it is free or it is at a marked concessional rate. There's a procedure surgery cost, consumable disposables, doctors' fees, miscellaneous costs, logistic and support costs. But the issue here is, in spite of the hospitals displaying their pricing, which is mandatory by NABH, which is the accreditation rules, there are a lot of hidden charges. You will come across in billing of extra charges, of administrative charges, admission charges, nursing care charges, and so on. So I think that needs to be streamlined. But on a larger framework, I have two very important points as a suggestion to the government. Hospitals must be categorized in category A, B, and C. At the present moment, it's free for all. This categorization must be based on number of hospital beds, number of ICU beds, the type of facilities, the infrastructure, the technologies, the types of operation theater, and the multi-speciality versus single speciality and so on. Apart from that, we must look into the huge concept of what we call as hospitals' lands which are owned by these charitable, absolutely nonsensical trusts. What is happening in this is that they have a common bank account, the money is put into the charitable trust, they get an income tax exemption. There is no charity. I repeat, there is no charity in this trust or the hospital, and the money just vanishes. So I think this is a fit case of ED or EOW to actually sweep into the accounts will be thoroughbred displayed to everyone. And apart from that, the last point which I want to make is there has to be a rationale, but the government hospitals, that means the state-run and the government-run hospital, also must improve their facilities. There must be fair pricing. It's the need of the hour. A classical case was in COVID, in which a lot of private hospitals had internal circulations which leaked out, and it was in public domain, including in media, that every patient will be charged between 1 to 1.25 lakhs per bed per day. That is criminal. I don't agree with it. This is unacceptable. There is a need for course correction, and I think it's a good decision that there must be a bandwidth, categorize the hospitals. I'm not saying that the hospitals in the private healthcare have to be loss-making. They have to make a profit, yes, but at a particular balancing act. Over to you.
All right, Dr. Bagai, as you help us draw perspective as to how you look at this, let me get in Mr. Khanna. Mr. Khanna, we heard both of them about how they're viewing this. A very fair point by Dr. Bagai in terms of many factors that really play into this. Do you think categorization of hospitals is also the need of the hour? As a consumer voice, how are you looking at this?
You see, the issue of arbitrary pricing by private hospitals is a very worrisome thing, because it has put the individual citizen at the receiving end of the short stick. You see, when a government employee or a retired person goes to a hospital, he is covered by CGHS. When the employee of a company goes to a hospital, he is covered by a corporate rate. If an insured goes, he is covered by the rates negotiated by the insurance company. But if it is none of these three categories, and the individual citizen who is protected under the Constitution, he goes to a hospital, he gets the highest rate than any of these three categories. And he doesn't even know how much the others are paying. The system is not transparent. Only a few people know how much is being charged. And I think it is highly discriminatory. The job under the law is of the Ministry of Health to set up uniform medical care prices to be charged by hospitals of different categories in different geographies. And for this purpose, the Clinical Establishments Act has been passed by the Parliament. And the Parliament has empowered this council and the Ministry of Health, which manages this council, to set up these rates. This issue has been raised in the council a number of times, but I'm afraid the lobby of the private hospitals is stronger than the voice of individual consumers, and nothing has been done. We welcome the intervention of the Supreme Court and hope that the Supreme Court can set into process a motion by which the Ministry of Health can consult with the state governments and find a mechanism to put a ceiling for prices to be charged by the private hospitals. They should by all means cover their costs. They should even make a reasonable profit and return on the investment, but they cannot be allowed to profiteer. And many of the hospitals are profiteering, and you look at their stock prices, what their issue prices were and what their current prices are in the stock market today. They have been profiteering at the cost of the average consumer, the citizen, who's at their mercy, and the Supreme Court and the High Courts are unable to protect their right to health, which is a fundamental right under the Constitution. Thank you.
Right, Mr. Khanna. So essentially, if you were to put it, we would say that all three of you do welcome it, but there is a need of course correction over there. But I want to thank the three of you for taking the time out and joining us here this afternoon to share with us your perspective. We leave the conversation at that. We're slipping in a quick break here on Mirror at 1. More news to continue this afternoon. Stay with us. We're going to be right back.